Welcome to The Latest Version, a podcast about change, growth, and reinvention. I'm your host, Betsy Bush. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I'm rebranding the show and taking a bit of a break. But before that happens, I wanted to share one last great conversation I had here in the studio with two people who really inspired me to take a second look at the latest version's emphasis on life pivots at middle age and retirement. Because what they taught me was that reinvention can happen at any age. I know you'll love this conversation. We recorded this in late February, just after the Winter Olympics and before the invasion of Ukraine, which, believe me, feels like a long time ago now. But what Roland and Jaya have to share is timeless. I know you'll enjoy this conversation. We talk on this podcast a lot about life changes that force someone to take a new life or career path. My guests today are still in their 20s, but have so much to share about their journeys. Roland Spier and Jaya Puglese were pursuing their passions as ballet dancers when they suffered career-ending injuries. Not only have they gone on to higher education and other careers, but they have formed a mentoring organization for dancers transitioning out of dance into new lives. Roland and Jaya, welcome to The Latest Version. I'm so glad to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much, Betsy.
Thank you so much, Betsy, for having us. We're both really excited to be here with you.
You know, listeners to this podcast know that at the age of 56, I went back to get a second undergraduate degree at Columbia University here in New York City. I ended up majoring in architecture. I graduated in May 2020. And one of my fellow architecture classmates was Roland. And I had no idea, Roland, that you had been training to be a ballet dancer. And in fact, I had found, talking to people, that there were a number of dancers at Columbia who were either in the School of General Studies, which was my entry path to Columbia, or in the regular program. Jaya, you as well were at Columbia. Mm-hmm. So, gosh, we have so much to talk about. Tell me a little bit about what your early lives were like. Training to be ballet dancers.
Sure.
Absolutely. Happy to kick it off. I grew up dancing ballet from a very young age. My mom had danced her entire life and thought it was a great idea to introduce it to me. Kept going on with it from early childhood into my adolescence, really took a passion for it. In high school, I would leave my academic classes at 2 p.m. every day to go train from 2 to 6, and then go back after and do my homework. And by the time I was graduating, I was deciding whether I wanted to pursue ballet professionally or apply to a regular university. So I applied to Columbia, but then after that decided to take 2 gap years. That's what they allot you. Mm-hmm. And first went to Miami City Ballet School for a year. And after that was recruited to be a trainee in the PD program, the professional division program at Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle, where I danced for a year. And it's after that, and unfortunately after a pretty major injury, that I decided to go back to school and somewhat move away from that professional path that I had been on.
Jaya, how about you?
I definitely had a very similar upbringing to Roland in that my parents put me in ballet classes at a super young age, except I hated it. I despised it. I didn't want to be dancing. And the rule was I had to dance until 6th grade, and then I could stop. But then it kind of backfired on my parents, because by the time I hit 6th grade, I was like, wow, this is great. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a ballet dancer. And they were like, oh, gosh. Okay, great. But I continued that all the way through high school. One summer, I received a full scholarship to train at the Bolshoi Ballet Academy, which is a pretty large ballet school in Russia. So I spent some time there. I was invited to stay there and continue my training there, but that would have meant not finishing high school in the U.S. So I decided to come back here, finished high school, and basically suffered a really severe ankle injury that had kind of built up over time, and I got to a point where I either needed a complete reconstruction done or I just had to stop. And so the answer was pretty clear to me. And so I stopped dancing, applied to college, got into Columbia, and continued on that path.
Wow. So I don't know how many of us, I mean, a lot of us have sports or things like that you start when you're little. But there's something about dance that I think it takes over, or it takes a large part of your identity, or it becomes a large part of your identity. You're also at a different institution where you're with other kids. It's not like you're playing football on the school team or basketball or something like that, where you're part of your school atmosphere. What was that like to be training? And tell me what it was like to be to have that identity form with you when you were so small.
Yeah. So I think for me personally, it made me feel quite different than the rest of my peers in school. And that was something that I always struggled with, because after school, I wasn't hanging around and doing school sports, and I wasn't playing soccer or going to football games. I was leaving as soon as the bell rang and running to ballet class, and I was there until like 9 or 10 p.m. each night. So while my identity wasn't really caught up in school and what other kids at my age were doing, my entire life was at the ballet studio. And so I was there. Homework was a second thought. When I got home and finished my homework, I was still thinking about ballet again, watching ballet videos, thinking about what I could do better in my next class, stretching, conditioning, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. And I think once the 2 p.m. bell would hit and I would go over to the Washington Ballet studios, completely different world, amazing community of friends that I made there. And what's incredible about ballet is that you not only have class, where you're, going through the techniques and the exercises that you're doing on a daily basis, but you then also have performances that you sometimes are rehearsing for months for. So you really are able to form these very strong bonds and connections with others that you're with for 5 hours a day. And it not only requires teamwork, but it just requires a level of communication that really leads to forming incredible connections with others.
Yeah. You just become so determined at a young age because you're always working towards something, whether that be getting point shoes if you're a female, or practicing for the next big show, getting a variation. Yeah,
pirouettes as a guy, learning the next new jumps or tricks as a guy. You're always there. You're always practicing. And there's very much a set path to improving, which gives you, the schedule and the strategy to push yourself further.
And I wonder, now that you're out, how do you look back at that time in your life as, I should say you're both professionals now, right? You're consultants with an international consulting firm?
Yeah, exactly. I can start us off here. Yeah. We both work for a boutique strategy international firm based in London, but we work out of their New York office. And it's kind of a coincidence that Jaya and I ended up there together, because we were actually friends in college as well. But yeah, it's great to be working together at this firm. How I look back at that experience, I think it's with a lot of joy for the discipline, the values that it taught me, a lot of joy and gratefulness for the people that I met through it, the incredible connections and the incredible people that have gone to do amazing things that I've been able to connect with. And on the other hand, a bit of sadness, to be perfectly honest, of what could have been. There were many times where my life might have gone down a different path if it had not been, for one injury or a couple injuries. And, a little bit of sadness due to that about giving something else up, but a lot of gratitude and a determination to give back to the arts and give back to the dance community how I can.
Yeah, I think I feel very similarly, Roland, in that I look back and I'm so grateful for all of the time I got to spend with my teachers, with my peers. Some of my dance friends are still, they're the closest people to me. I speak to them all the time. And the discipline and the skills you learn are just, it's irreplaceable. Those are skills that never really leave you. But at the same time, I do look back with a lot of sadness because obviously I wish I could have continued down my dance career path. And also at the same time, I do feel like I learned a lot of unhealthy behaviors at a young age, which then I was conditioned to believe were normal. And now when I look back and reflect upon it, which I've obviously done a lot of recently with Second Act, I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, I really shouldn't have felt that way at 13 or 14. Like I should have felt a lot different, a lot better about myself at that age.
Can you share a little, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, sure. I think as a ballet dancer, you never really feel good enough. You're always really striving for this perfection. And whether that be your technique, whether that be how you look or the attention you receive, like you're always really just pushing and pushing. And that is really draining, especially when you're an adolescent.
Yeah, there's a certain level of pursuit of perfectionism that moving into your career, now our careers as consultants in the professional world, that you have to manage with yourself and learn to give up to a certain extent. And that's on the flip side of a lot of incredible values like grit, hard work, perseverance, learning to be patient with yourself that you learn through dancing and growing up doing ballet. And I think what's been incredible through Second Act is that we have found a community of people who we can really relate to and connect with about this experience.
Yeah.
We've just finished watching the Winter Olympics. What do you see when you see very young athletes who might still be teenagers in contention for Olympic medals? What in your mind is going? What do you see as far as training and whole life involvement in something like that? I'm just wondering what your take on it is.
Absolutely. Well, certainly the pressure. And I think, we've had great experiences with teachers in the ballet world who have taught us values and, things about ourselves and how to succeed. But I think we've also all had a moment, dealing with someone who is an authority figure, just putting you under a lot of pressure at a very young age. And I think that for a lot of dancers, especially those who grow up doing this is their whole identity, this is their whole life, having that opportunity to do the thing that you're best at taken away from you can be extremely difficult and extremely challenging. So that is what I see there.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Roland. And it always makes me think about, well, what's next for them? Like, how do they transition into whatever new life that they want? When you've been doing figure skating for so long or ballet for so long, I mean, gymnastics, it's quite similar as well. You've been training your entire life so intensively. Where do you go next? How do you figure out what you care about? Like, what do you want to learn? Where do you want to go? And all of that is just, it's exciting, but it's also incredibly stressful and nerve-wracking.
And it's certainly something that both Jaya and I both experienced in stopping ballet and then figuring out what to do next in our lives. And it was, for me at least, it was a very difficult transition period, both in terms of finding new interests and also emotionally giving up what had been a past life. And having other people there to support me and give me guidance was a crucial part of finding my path.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about finding that new path, because if you've done nothing but dance, and of course you're also involved in the music and things like that. And yet you found architecture to be interesting. Tell me how you came upon that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a freshman at Columbia, you're exposed to a lot of different pursuits, and architecture was the first that really jumped out to me. I'd always been interested in it growing up, and then finding that intersection of art and also mathematics and geometry and STEM really spoke to me in a way similarly that ballet did, in that there is structure, but there's also creativity. And that is what initially drew me to architecture, and really finding that as a pursuit to be able to reshape my identity, find a new purpose was extremely helpful and was very much a healing experience, as I progressed through undergrad. And I had an incredible time in the program, even if I'm not a practicing architect now. It was just an incredible experience, and so glad that I found that as a channel.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Jaya, I know you studied in Russia. Well, why don't you talk about that? And then you came to Columbia and you continued that interest in Russian studies, correct?
Yeah. So when I decided to stop dancing, my way of coping with that was, I can't stay at home. I don't want to be in the place where I've done the same thing for so many years, but not be able to do that thing. So I went back to Russia and I finished high school there. So it kind of seemed like a really easy transfer to kind of throw myself into that. And so at Columbia, I studied that along with politics. And, I loved my studies. I loved my time at Columbia, but I don't think I ever really filled that niche that ballet did. And that was something I struggled with for a lot of years. And it took a lot of thinking and searching within myself to kind of figure out, I still love ballet a lot, and trying to figure out how I can interact with it and include it in my life is probably something I need to do. So my senior thesis was about a famous choreographer. His name is Alexei Repnensky, and it was kind of an intersection between my Russian studies and ballet history. And my thesis advisor, when I was presenting it at the end of the year, she sat me down and she was like, hey, I really think you need to acknowledge to yourself, and you need to say this to everyone else, that this is kind of a goodbye to your ballet identity as being just a dancer, because now you have included that ballet identity in your academic studies and pursuits, and that's something you should be really proud of.
Nice.
Absolutely. And I think part of it now, and with this organization that we're starting, is finding a way to embrace that within our careers as young professionals, and creating a community of people who also feel that connection.
Okay, so let's talk about second act, which is I'm so inspired by how this has come together so quickly. And so quickly. So tell me how you started it and how it's going and what its purpose is.
Do you want to take it?
Absolutely, sure. So second act was really born out of our experience transitioning from ballet to our first higher education in Columbia, and then both our academic focus and now our subsequent careers in management consulting. And it is based on helping others who are going through this time of transition speak to those who have done it and find a new path through these conversations that we're able to connect between different people. So in practice, it means mentees who are either current professional dancers or who are pre-professional dancers who have had dance be a focus of their whole life, connecting with people who are now working in second careers in university, and being able to have conversations about what a new path for them can look like.
So there is life after ballet.
There is.
There is. You do prove it. I'm sure not everyone can get into Columbia and do well at Columbia. It's a tough place academically. What is open for people who it's like, I don't think I can work at that level, but what else might be available to them?
Well, we currently have about 40 to 50 mentors who we're blown away by this still within 2 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you just started this in the summer of 2021, right?
Right, yeah. We started forming it in the summer of 2021, really building the building blocks for it in November and December of 2021 with our launch in January. And the response, has been absolutely incredible. And I think what's been so great is that we are really getting a diversity in terms of the mentors that we're recruiting to be part of our network.
Yeah.
So, not everyone needs to go to Columbia or, at school. There are so many amazing opportunities beyond that. And that's what we're really leveraging this network to explore.
And I think the really cool thing about the network is that we are getting organic signups. So people want to be involved. They want to be able to give back. But also if we get a mentee who, for example, we just recently had someone who said that they're interested in real estate. And we can dip into our networks and say like, hey, does anyone know anyone who's done this or anyone who's done that? And we can very quickly find someone who kind of fits that bill. And it's just incredible.
That is incredible. Wow. I can think of so many variations on this theme, because I think a lot of people in the performing arts, maybe they don't have career-limiting injuries, but they might just feel like they've hit a brick wall. It's like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm auditioning, but I'm not getting roles, or the roles are small, and I'm not having the opportunities that I need to have, maybe even just to support themselves.
Right.
And
I certainly had that experience very, very early on. I had a couple offers to go to some regional companies, some second companies in different cities, different states, and never quite found that any of them was necessarily going to be the right fit for what I wanted long term. And I think that having the opportunity to present to other people a choice in terms of, dance is amazing. We want to support you for as long as you want to remain in the dance world. But we also want you to know that if you ever decide to do something else, that there is a support system in place for you. I think having that in place is really what we want to present to the dance community.
Yeah. And it's not just a support system in terms of professional development. So it's not just, oh, you want to stop dancing? Okay, well, here's 3 or 4 career options that you may like. It's also that peer-to-peer emotional support and that, oh, yeah, I've been there. Like, I get it, because that's a really difficult transition to do by yourself, and it's very isolating.
And I think Second Act was also born out of us already having these conversations organically with these people. And then thinking from there, how could we scale this to have a broader impact and really get some thought-provoking conversations started?
So are you just in the New York City area, or do you have mentors all over the country? What sort of thing, I realize you're a very young organization. And honestly, this is incredible to have 40 or 50 mentors already signed up, because, well, I know people in the performing arts generally are very giving people, very generous with their time, and love to bond with others. So I'm not surprised, really. But how do you see this rolling out and going forward?
Well, I think, firstly, we really want to build out our mentorship network, because obviously that's the primary focus of Second Act, is that mentorship piece. And we're going to probably do a series on mental health going forward, because that just seems to be a really hot and interesting topic for all of us. So we see there's like an event side, and then we also are envisioning a kind of scholarship fund that we can give out to people who need it. So whether that be for college applications, for short-term travel to maybe go to see schools or go to job interviews, things like that. And then we'd also, this is kind of getting up there in our dreams and future goals, but we'd really love to do a type of internship sponsorship where we can find and create internships for some of our mentees and dancers and kind of be able to match them to a company for a summer.
Absolutely. And I think on that first point also about it being national, we've received interest from all different cities, all different pockets. We have people on the West Coast. We have people in Texas. We have people in the Southeast. The network effect has been real.
Yeah.
And the engagement has been national and quickly growing. So we are very thankful for all the people who have volunteered with us so far, and we are so excited to work with them.
Yeah. Right. And I do have to give a shout out to all of our friends who have helped us and joined us. A lot of our mentors have come from my time in Russia. So, there's a weird group of us, and we haven't spoken in years. And then I reached out about it, and now all of us have reconnected and are pretty actively talking and working on this together. And I know, Roland, you've been having a similar experience as well.
Absolutely. Reconnecting with people that I may not have spoken to for years, and reaching out on LinkedIn and offering their support, offering their time, offering their advice. And we are so grateful for that. And we are really excited about where this is going, getting a board together, getting a really great team working, and it's going to be great.
Wow, it sounds incredible. I'm wondering, do you have mixed feelings when you go to ballet performances? What is that like to be in the audience and not on stage? Is that a difficult thing to do?
Yeah, Jaya and I actually went 2 weeks ago. So we went to see New York City Ballet, which is awesome. And they are so great. And we are so happy that they are back on stage and dancing.
Yes.
It means so much for the New York art scene and that community. Yeah, it is challenging sometimes, especially if you're watching or listening to a piece of music that you've danced to. It can be quite emotional. I think that I've found a new appreciation for it actually as an audience member now, and hopefully as a patron. And it's seeing it from the audience point of view can be both challenging sometimes, but also incredibly rewarding as well.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't maybe tear up at every ballet performance I went to, because at some point you're going to get emotional. Because you're not only thinking about your history with it, but you're also thinking about all of the hard work and effort these dancers have put into it. And it's a bit sad because you reflect on your past, but at the same time I get really excited for them because I'm like, wow, look at them. They're on stage. They're doing it. We've all beaten the COVID odds. Like the New York art scene is back. So there's also just a lot of joy there as well.
I wonder if you could pare down to 3 pieces of advice for dancers or really anyone. I'm also thinking of athletes or performing artists who feel like it's time for me to make a break and I need to leave this life behind and start something else. Can you think of, kind of 3 pieces of general advice you would offer to people in that situation?
I can certainly think of a few. I think the first thing I would say is listen to yourself, listen to your body. What is it telling you? If that is what, you are hearing from yourself, that probably means that it is the right time to try something else. Speaking from my experience, I knew that I had a choice between pursuing dance professionally or going back to Columbia, and I was tired. I was tired both emotionally. My body was suffering, and just listening to that really keyed me in that this was the right time to make that choice and step back. That's the first piece of advice I would give. The second piece of advice I would give is be open-minded. Really take a beginner's mind approach to discovering what your new path or your new purpose might be. I had never assumed that I would be majoring in architecture and now working in consulting in the business world. And I think that taking a real step back to look at all your options, evaluate them based on your experience with a very open mind is a piece of advice that I would give. And the third is lean on your community, lean on your friends, and don't be afraid to speak to people outside of the dance world. It was at times tough with fellow dancers who are still full throttle in it, and I 100% respect them for it. But sometimes it can be all engrossing, and you need to take a step back to remember that there's a wider world out there.
Yeah. I think my advice would probably hit on a lot of things that you just mentioned, Roland. First, I think it would be that there is a world outside of ballet, and it is worth exploring. There is joy, there is happiness, and there are other interests you can find and pursue. And you don't really have to box yourself into that original identity you may have formed for yourself. My second piece of advice would be that you also don't have to throw away those skills that you've learned. I think some of the most successful people I've met, let's look at Roland. Roland is brilliant. He's a great consultant, and a lot of those skills have come from...
She's making me blush.
Well, also just look at our community of mentors.
Absolutely.
They're incredible.
We are so inspired by them.
Yeah.
Wow.
They have done amazing things, and a lot of them will credit their success to their strict ballet training and that type of upbringing. So not forgetting that those skills are actually really valuable and you can easily transfer them to something else. And then I think third would be that you don't have to completely rid yourself of that identity. And at some point, you can figure out a healthy way to interface with ballet or dance in a way that is beneficial to yourself and kind of makes you feel like you haven't fully left it, but also in a way that is allowing you to move on and move forward with your life.
And we see a lot of people as well who go down the path of dancing and doing another career at the same time. And while Jaya and I didn't go down that route, we see a lot of people doing that very successfully in terms of some of our mentors. So for people who do want to go down that route, there are definitely ways to do it as well.
What sort of thing could you do that would allow you to dance part-time? Are there like community dance companies that don't quite require the full-time engagement?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of freelancing. I think especially in the New York art scene, we have one mentor, shout out to Ali Block, who I'm thinking about. She's incredible. She's actually going to be leading our panels on mental health. And she has both graduated from Columbia with a degree in psych, does clinical research as well as dancing for a number of regional ballet companies. And there are plenty of opportunities to do so. There's a lot of guesting, a lot of freelancing. I did some of that, prior to kind of hanging up the dance shoes, and could definitely see it as an opportunity to keep it dancing part-time as well. And there are also a number of people who do both and who maybe do ballet full-time. A number of New York City ballet dancers who are so impressive, who are doing both that full-time and then taking part-time classes in Columbia GS.
Yeah. Shout out to Ali. Ali is lovely, and we're really excited to be working with her. But she manages to kind of balance both dance and pursuing her career in psych, which is really amazing to see happen. Yeah. She does it so well.
And it's not for everyone, right? Yeah. I think there are people who do want to put it behind and move on. I certainly fell in that camp, but there are certainly opportunities to do both.
Oh, that's so interesting. What do you think ballet gave you that you're taking into your professional career? What skills or what do you draw on at times when you're in those meetings and you have to think, oh, now I have to come up with a move,
right.
with a step here.
I think there's a funny thing in the performing arts world where you're told that you never make a mistake until the audience sees that you're reacting towards making that mistake. And I think that's something that's actually, I hope my bosses aren't listening to this, but this is something that's actually, I think, carried over quite well in the professional world is having that ability to perform under pressure and in front of an audience is something that is an incredible skill, and I am so grateful that ballet gave me that. I think teamwork is also something that's really important. Jaya, the work that Jaya and I do, it's very team focused. We're in these teams of maybe 4 to 6 people working very closely for 1 to 2 months at a time on these very concrete, focused projects. And having that ability to connect with others and really listen to them the way you're listening to your partner in the studio or the way you're listening to the other people in your core group when you're doing a ballet, and being very attuned to what works and what doesn't has been very helpful for me.
Yeah, I think definitely all of the things Roland has mentioned, but I think as dancers, we're quite stubborn. We'd stay in the studio until we perfected something. We would do the same piece over and over again for months at a time until it was good enough to put on stage. So in the workplace, we're kind of perfectionists, but it's a different type of perfectionism. We're not going to drive ourselves absolutely mad, but we want to get it right, and we're going to learn how to do it the right way. And I think that's something that definitely I feel like sets us apart.
And there are flaws as well. Don't get us wrong.
Total flaws.
We're not perfect either.
No.
There are definitely a number of things that come with those 15 years of experience that shape you in good ways and others in ways that aren't so positive. But
yeah. But so one of those being, I feel like I have an odd sense of hierarchy in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Which is something I've recently realized and I've been talking to a lot of people about, because ballet's it's the people who are above you, they're above you.
Yep.
And you know your place in line, but in a workplace where everyone's kind of
in
all
flux,
friends.
right?
It's weird.
You don't take the principal spot at the ballet bar.
Oh, never.
In our office, I mean, the manager is sitting 2 desks down from you and is, the friendly guy you get a coffee with and who's willing to talk about, your life goals.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely a bit of a transition there as well.
Oh, that's so interesting, right? Because I think in a lot of offices now, right, they're trying to introduce a more flattened less hierarchical office structure, right, where everyone has something different to bring to the table and you need to listen to everyone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so grateful to have had Roland Spier and Jaya Puglese with me today. They are the founders. Can I say founders?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
co-founders.
Of co-founders of Second Act, which is a mentoring organization for dancers transitioning out of dance and being mentored by those who have already done it. And they are recent graduates from Columbia University, and they are professional consultants, and obviously they're really incredible people. And I'm so grateful to have had them on the latest version today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Really appreciate it.
This was great. This was great.